told me long ago, there's a calm before the storm. I know she's been coming for some time. Though it comes as all the way, does bring a sunny day. I know, shining down like a water.
Go for it.
I want to know, have you ever seen the rain? I want to know, have you ever seen the rain coming down on day? What up, Tony?
Yo, yeah, I have to say, I've been watching these. Your voice is getting better. Are you taking lessons?
No. No, but I will say there are certain bands.
10,000 hours. You're like maybe 500 hours in.
I'm about 506 hours in. No, there's certain bands that I can sing that I think I sound good at, and some I sound really bad at. In fact, I think I sound good in all of them, but I know I only sound good in about 1% of them. How you doing, buddy?
Good. I want an AI algorithm to help me figure that out. So when I show up at karaoke, it's like, dude, you want to be singing these songs, not these.
Yes. So, stay away from Taylor Swift, Darius.
Exactly. It's pretty universal for males.
yeah. Don't do it. Guys, welcome to the Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mirshahzadeh, and boy, do we have a special guest, my main man, the one, the only, Tony Lillios. Welcome to the house, brother.
Prepared with unicorns and all.
Oh man, guys! Those of you who know the show know that we're about two things: those who are living their passions and those who are creating greatness in the world. And my friend Tony is doing both those things. So, man, I'm so pumped to have you here. I've been looking forward to this for months and months, and finally here we are. Woo! You ready to chop it up?
I am,
man. I'm well rested. I've been on the road the last couple of weeks, so I haven't done any shows. And I'm like, I came home and I'm like, oh, I got Tony Lillios show this week. So, do you mind if I give a little bit of background on how we know each other? And then I'd love to do your formal bio if you don't mind.
Yeah, just leave that little naked backroom story out of the.
It was passionate.
It's passionate, but let's keep that part of passion out of this story.
We're talking about the Greatness Machine here. Come on. So, guys, Tony and I, we met through Gathering of Titans. He and I are, as you guys know, I talk about this on the show a lot. I'm in a really badass program up at MIT. I'm actually chairing it this year. And I met Tony early in my early days. And he and I really hit it off. Turned out that he had exited his business, which was a pretty incredible company called Spec that many of you probably know and love, and was doing integral leadership. And he asked me a question. He's like, oh, have you done Stagen? Do you know Stagen? And I was like, we're on a bus ride back from an event, and we got to talking, and I learned all about this program called Stagen, which I have now since gone through, and he has gone through at the time. And so, yeah, man, it's been kind of an interesting road, and that was actually it was my introduction to that program. But I figured out pretty quickly that Tony and I had a couple things in common. First of all, we're both conscious capitalists. We do believe in the power of business leaders elevating themselves to create greatness in the world, but do good while creating greatness, while doing good in their businesses. And so I saw that we have that in common, and man, I'm just so pumped to have you here and to talk about all the things that you're up to, man. First of all, I want to thank you for introducing me to Stagen, because it did change my life. So thank you for that, Tony. Appreciate that
awesome.
very much, man. Yeah.
And the thing I think you don't know, maybe, is I'm deeper in with Stagen now. So I'm coaching with Stagen now.
Oh,
so,
I did not know that.
Didn't know that. Yeah. So I just talked to our friend Doug Irwin about that this week, and he was like, I didn't know that. Yeah. So I'm loving that. Just really deepening the connection with conscious capitalism and the Stagen path, that community, both all the stakeholders, the folks in Stagen and the team there. I'm loving being a part of that. It's great.
That's so cool. So are you coaching ILP?
You got it.
Awesome. I do want to give some your formal intro. So, guys, Tony Lillios is certified integral coach, as we just heard. He's one of the coaches at Stegan now, bringing forth his worlds of being an entrepreneur, designer, and endurance athlete, serving others looking to invest in creating new possibilities. He works with individuals, small teams looking to unlock more possibilities when feeling stuck. And his most productive relationships are with clients that have tried to address what isn't working or what they aspire towards and have come up short. And we're going to be talking a lot around core values today and around the integral leadership work. I'd love if you would give, because, yeah, baby. And Tony, it was funny when I sent you guys don't know this, but I send, unless you're really watching my social media, I always send my guests a love bomb. It's a Be a Pink Unicorn box, and his kids were debating it they got it and they're debating the unicorns in his car, and he sent me a video of it. And I was like, man, this is so badass. So I really appreciated that. And obviously you're wearing the Karate Kid inspired headband, which is my unicorn headband. But I'd love for you to take a step back before we get into how you got into what you're doing now. I mean, you and your partner built a pretty ridiculous company in spec, and I know you were working with IDEO before that. Is that correct?
Yep.
So if you don't mind, give us some background, because I know this is all kind of born out of Silicon Valley, Palo Alto, Stanford. Do you mind kind of taking us to your origin story and give us some background, and then we could get into what you're doing nowadays?
Yeah. So we were at IDEO, me and my three partners at the time, actually, and we were kind of hired guns. IDEO is a consulting firm. We're being paid hourly to solve other people's problems. And business-wise, we felt like we weren't really fully on the same bus heading in the same direction as clients. We're incentivized to crank hours, and they're incentivized for us to develop a product that's going to kill it. And that really, we had no connection to that as consultants. And I felt like we felt like it was just, there was a disconnect there. So we started Spec with the intention of getting better alignment of the people who are actually designing products, who are in the trenches, and the companies as a consultant. Let's get us all aligned that we all win when we all win. And we were like, and when we come up short, we want to feel that pain too. So we tried a bunch of different business models, and that I won't go down the rabbit hole of all the things we tried, because there were a lot of failures. And there are some great failures, and then oh my gosh, 5 years later, that wasn't a failure. It suddenly circled around. We're like, whoa, home run. But eventually we decided that we needed to have our own companies. We couldn't really continue to function as a consultant and help other companies and really kind of fully align. So we spun off the consulting firm and then started our own businesses. And so Spec, the case company, is one of 4 companies that we ended up spinning off. And I think it's also worthy in that kind of origin story to mention, there was a company that we started called Simple Devices in there, which was doing streaming media to a variety of devices, like to your car and to your home and stuff. And this was before there was even a Wi-Fi standard. So home RF was out there. So we were so in the future, but we couldn't even, but the building blocks weren't even there. We're talking a real player. There was just all kinds of fragmentation in the market, and we thought we could pull it together. And we found that a lot of our early company and ideas, we were just too far. We were just too far ahead of ourselves. Some of our patents were just too forward looking. And we were just too small to connect all those dots. And so that was kind of a big lesson for us. So Spec came about in that, and we were doing a lot of work with Dell and Apple, and we kind of had visions of we could see through our consulting work products that were coming out. And companies like Apple and Dell were like, we're happy to have a robust third-party market for accessories when we launch products, and they want that. And we thought we were stealing their bacon by doing that. And they're like, no. We want to sell the core product, but if you got great accessories, that makes our core product look great. And so we're like, oh, well, we're designing these core products for you. We'd love to do some accessories. And so that's got us into this accessory market. With the iPod really taking off. And the thing that we never really tooted is we're the the origin, the beginners of the hard cases. Before us, we were kind of in this messy market of a little bit of leather cases, a little bit of rubber cases, but really going whole hog into the cost and commitment that it takes to go into hard cases. We were the first ones out there, and we kind of made that market. We did it for phones, we did it for laptops, and then kind of grew that. People came in, it became a big market. And then what happened with us is once we kind of plateaued. Do we want to get specific with numbers or not really?
I love numbers, but if you're willing to share them, sure.
Yeah. So we were around like 150 million for several years, and kind of was plateauing. And what was happening is as we kind of got into the nooks and crannies, the long tail of the market, it just got so expensive for us to get into that store in Iran or that place in Poland, and like it just got harder and harder and more expensive. So we'd lose stuff along the way too. So we just couldn't keep it kicking up. So we eventually sold to Samsonite, who already had those relationships, that distribution channel where it's just like they can just like flick the light switch on and like boom, specs. Right. And so we came to that place where we're like, it's just too easy. We're too valuable for someone like Samsonite who can just flick the light switch on and make it happen. And so that's where, like, after so many years of just plateauing and going, we're not busting through here. That's where we said, let's hand it off to those guys and let them shepherd it forward.
So it's funny. My last business kind of plateaued, and that was when I wanted to raise capital, and it was, it's a long story, but we were pretty close to where you were at, a little bit above it. But how long were you guys stuck at that 150 for?
3, maybe 4 years. It was probably 120 to 150 for 4 years.
It's interesting, like when you're on your like how did you feel the first time you had hit 100, by the way? Because I remember the first.
We were celebrating. There was this one year where it just started getting crazy, where monthly revenues were like just going crazy. And so like we hit 6 million, and I remember we gave everyone in the company something that had to do with 6, and then 7, then 8. I remember magic 8 balls. Everyone got magic 8 balls for 8. And so when we hit 10 million a month, that was like, oh wait, this game is getting a little crazy, And honestly, I mean, the real truth of it is that, and that's part of the success formula with Spec, is that we brought very competent people on as we were growing, people who like knew what they were doing at these stages and really kind of gave them the reins. So we would give them direction. We had an amazing CEO that we brought in at one point, Irene Barron. And so my point, where am I going with this, is that so these numbers get kind of big. And so you're like, I have the embodied remembrance of when this thing was like a shoestring. And that sometimes would hold back my thinking. And so it was so great to have people who worked with us, for us, that these were like non-flinching numbers. So they are like, like, oh my God, there's another 0. Like it was like intimidating sometimes for me, but we built this environment where it was so normal for the people we were working with. It helped kind of like, okay, calm your giggles down and like, let's get back to business. And this is what we're going to be doing here. So I think it was really great not to have to just kind of get through that on our own. There were just people who were like, sit down, buddy, it's going to be okay. Like, I've done this before, and so yeah. That was really helpful. It was kind of a very virtuous cycle of the people's, because some of these people who had done this before had done this like as passengers in other companies, and now they're like, oh, we get to be leaders and do this, like, so they were getting some mojo out of it. It wasn't just like sleepwalking for them. So there was this real virtuous cycle of like, we're all like getting to kill it. And it's like they saw the value in us and we saw the value in them, but it was a perfect kind of yin yang-y kind of feeling.
Yeah. I love that. In that, and I don't know if this is, this is a Stegan quote, this is a Rand quote, which is, with the leadership goes the organization, right? So to your point, you cannot become that organization unless the leaders there are the leaders that are going to lead that type of organization. Sometimes you can do that organically yourself, right? And sometimes you're doing a combination of yourself and bringing in others. It sounds like you guys were successful in the latter, in bringing in people who had done it, plus you yourself leveling up to be the leaders that needed to help shepherd that into fruition.
Absolutely. And you can go back to our, the Wayback Machine and look at the first spec with Spec Design website. And our first kind of thing had a fancy animated GIF on it. We thought we were so clever. But it was all about having no ego. We didn't name the company after ourselves. And so we knew in our growth, we were always kind of very attentive of where are our real capabilities and where's our edge and push our edge, but not to but to be clear about that. And that was kind of, I felt like a part of our special sauce, because when we started as a design consulting firm, a lot of those are very ego driven. Your name's on the door, and people are coming for you. So then there's this paranoia of like, I've hired people that my name is like associated, like my name is associated.
This is my name on that door.
Okay, you better not screw it up, and so so there's a paranoia, and a good friend of mine, Alexis Bitar, does like jewelry, and he sold that company, and like I think it was crazy that he sold his company with his name on the door, and I'm like, that's so crazy. For the rest of for eternity, your name is going to be floating around in the world without you having any
input. Someone owns your name, sir.
Totally.
You don't own your own name.
The Halston movie that's on Netflix now kind of shows that well too. We knew we didn't want to connect that, and so that also freed us to kind of bring in leadership more easily, because it wasn't us. There was always this other. So as our partners, even when we would hit our valleys and we would go up and down, it was so an amazing relationship with me and my partners, where whenever the valleys hit, none of us got kind of land grabby of like, I need to protect my own butt. No blaming, like you caused this valley, so it's your fault. So I'm thus going to do that. We always had and there were multiple valleys. There was always a sense of this thing that we're connected with, that thing. I always had this visual. We're all tied to the string of this thing spec between us, and that rocket ship, we need to get that collectively, that rocket ship off the ground, and it will pull us up with it. So our attention was always like, what can we do for it? And then let it go, and then everything will be good. So it was great.
So oh shoot, I got a little echo there. Is that on my side?
I don't know. I didn't hear it.
Huh. Let me see. Let me make sure. Is that gone now? All right,
I don't hear it.
Echo's gone. All right, that's good. Sorry. So back to so you guys sold. I first of all,
we're talking about the rocket ship.
Yeah. What you guys described that's the winning formula for a partnership, and it's rare. I mean, partnerships generally don't work out, right? That's like all good partnerships come to an end. The question is it a happy ending or not? Right? Do you? And in your guys' case, you guys did end with an acquisition, which I would say is a happy ending, right?
It was a happy ending. Not all acquisitions are happy endings, but this was a happy ending. Let me push back on that and challenge you in two ways. One, I don't know if you remember this data. It was shared with us at Birthing the Giants, like the original one, where someone spoke, a professor from, I want to say MIT, where he was saying that, and this is after we were going, obviously, because I'm in BOG, but the data was showing that companies are more successful and more likely to be successful with the increasing numbers of co-founders, at least correlated up to 4. So at that time, the data he was saying was 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 4, more likely to be successful, meaning we're going to be in business 5 years later from when they started, and a higher degree of success. And so the kicker is higher. And the other amplifier is if one of the founders is a salesperson, that also is a correlate. And I was like, Oh, that's interesting, because everyone that what you just said is what I hear, and I wonder if there's a selection bias thing there, where it's like when partnerships go bad, we've got fireworks, we've got stories for days. So I wonder that. I also want to,
what I would layer into that, and I would be curious what the data says, is I would actually agree with that if it's equal partnership. I think that and maybe that's where I think that if you do not have equal partnership with a partnership group, I think that is what destroys partnerships, because it's really hard to align incentives if there is not a equal incentive for the end result. So I'll use an example. Oh, got you upside down. There you are. So yeah, I think I do think that it is around. I think that there is probably variables around control and how you win, right? Because if it's all equal partnerships, I think that everyone's kind of aligned, right? And
that's an interesting. I wonder how that data that would layer in, because that was our situation. We were equal partnerships, and in fact, that was something else I wanted to share about what I felt was our winning formula. Is when we incorporated, you get your standard, like you've never done this before, you don't know what you're doing. You get from the lawyers your articles of incorporation. Like this is boilerplate. This is how the world works, kids. And you get this thing, and you learn about like voting rights and supermajority and this. And we were like, this was 4 of us at this time, and we're like, this is weird. Like we never, like we have to hold votes and board meetings and what? This is governance. And so we were like, okay. So 3 of us were like, this is BS. And one of us, Ryan, was like, this is the way the world works, people. Like wake up and smell the coffee. So we said, okay, the 3 of us as a supermajority are voting to change the bylaws to make it a unanimous decision going forth. We're going to change the bylaws to say that. And so we did that. And we said, now, Ryan, how does that feel? Like we've never made a decision like that. The 3 of us agree to something. We're just going to like, boom, trump you and smack you down. Like, how does that feel? Do you have some resentment to this? Are you going to be looking over your shoulder? Like, yeah. And so we did change the bylaws, but more importantly, we continued to operate as we had been until we got the bylaws like handed to us by the lawyers. And what that was is that we knew we had mutual respect for each other. We knew we knew we had shortcomings. And so what would happen is when decisions were made and there was dissension, the minority group, the single person that was out, was kind of charged with like, oh wow, I've got to like convince, I've got to like lay it out. Like I got to get some clarity here for these folks. And if I can't get them to see with me, then I just suspend I can let go of my belief if it's my way, and they see something that I don't see, and I let go. I join in, we go forward. And literally, it sounds like, oh, really? That's the way it works? Like you don't harbor this. It does. And so, I mean, literally so much so that we would go forward and like we'd hit a valley and we'd have this, like, we talked about this. Yeah. One of us was against this.
You're like, I told you guys that we were going to get fucking crushed.
No. Zero. I'm honest.
Oh, really? Oh, because they're like, how? Because they're like, hey, we all agreed. We agreed to go forward. So
once you agreed, you're enrolled, and you literally forget. The argument is for the sake of the moment to decide what's best, and what's best is something that I didn't think was best, but now we collectively, you get like assimilated into this best decision so that you go forward, and then you can, it's a haunting, like little like gurgling memory, but you literally can't remember, like, was I the one or was it you? Like,
well, I think that's part of the dynamic I just discussed before. So let's just say Ryan was the majority shareholder that could trump all 3 of your votes. And let's say you got 3 said, we don't want to do this. And he said, fuck you, you're doing it. And then it didn't work. Then you would have been like, yeah, motherfucker, I told you it wasn't going to work.
I remember that. I'll remember that,
You know, it's like, you're like, dude, really? Every time? Right? So I do think that like those
clearing. So there was where EO talks about clearing. It's like we had this natural clearing that would happen at every decision point that we could just remember we cleared, but we can't even remember what happened because we got clear. And so the situation you're describing is you're so not clear. You're like, there's like a resentment weight being slugged through the mud as you move forward, which I wonder, like, does that affect the outcome? Like, it's like it has to affect enrollment, you know?
Yeah. Of course it does, right? Because if people are not 100%, dude, it's hard to win in business. Half of business is luck, and the other half is like working your ass off to iterate to make it work.
Yeah.
Right?
And so we only knew our own experience, but only when I would talk to other entrepreneurs did I realize that it was unusual to not talk about the past very much. Like, we did not like harbor resentment. There was literally like, shit's hitting the fan. How are we getting out of this? Shit's hitting the fan. How do we get out of this? Shit's hitting the fan. What do we have to get us out of this? Like, there was no like, well, I mean, there was some degree of like calculate like what got us here, like maybe what we wouldn't want to do again. So there's not like we're not learning from our mistakes, but it was kind of limited to like, let's learn from our mistakes so we can be strategic and thoughtful moving forward. That felt natural and normal for us because that's how we organized and that's who we were. Yeah. And I was like, ooh, that was so nice. Because I actually realized that I have low tolerance for that now. I have like developed this with my partners. This is how we work. And when I'm in other kind of structures that have kind of blaming going on and, you know, the power struggles that you're talking about, I'm like,
yeah, no patience for it.
And I feel like it's because I haven't developed the skill. Like some people that's their normal, that's their, that's the soup they've been swimming in and they've developed skills. I feel like also having lack of alignment, like when you're the leader of your company, you can bring alignment, you can make alignment happen. Like that's part of like with core values and all of this. When I'm like in volunteer situations, when I'm kind of on boards where I didn't hire these people, I didn't choose my peers. And when I feel under-resourced, unskillful of navigating that murky world where like, oh, these aren't all people that I put in the chairs. Like, and I don't, it's like, it's kind of foreign to me, but I'm like, other people do this all the time and they can skillfully navigate that.
Yeah. It's difficult. I'd love to, we got about 20 minutes. I want to move on to, the exit. You exited and then you got into this world of integral coaching. Do you mind kind of walking us through that? And I know you and I have some really cool stuff to talk about regarding, where you're at right now with the tools that you're using as an integral coach. But yeah, tell us how you transitioned from, you sold the business and then you made this really amazing transition into integral coaching. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, so in the intro you mentioned Stegan. So I was in the Stegan ILP program as a client going through that. And it's a little hyperbolic the way I'll say this, but there's a thread of truth. It's like I'm getting this coach from Nathaniel Chalkin, mixed martial
Nathaniel was your coach?
Yeah, totally.
I didn't know.
Like,
all right, cool.
Dude, you're a mixed martial artist, you're a classical pianist, you're like deep into meditation. Like, what do you got for me? I'm being hyperbolic, but a little bit it was like, I don't know about this coaching thing. Like, how's this going to work for me? And so having a year of like, oh, I get this. Like, this is like, that was ninja. I still have a great relationship with Nathaniel. That inspired me to kind of, okay, as we're closing my relationships, closing that chapter of multiple companies and selling them off, I was like, this coaching thing, integral coaching for me really felt like, oh, this feels very me. And so versus with a lot of our peers have gone into business coaching, which is very tactical and practical. And, it's very like scaling up, like we're going to like tell you how to grow. And this is how it is. Integral coaching kind of addresses like the whole person's like the whole ecosystem. It's all kind of connected and acknowledging that and kind of allowing it to grow together. I was like, yeah, because what was happening for me is as an endurance athlete that I like flicked on a switch in 2009, 2010 of doing this stuff. I was like, wow, it was so cool to see as my development was kind of as was pushing boundaries in this physical domain, stuff was happening in other parts of my life too. And I was like, how is that connected? How is this oozing? What's the common thread? And I was like, oh, I'm the common thread. Like as my development goes over here, it's all kind of connecting. And so that's what integral coaching kind of coaches to the whole person in all these domains, because sometimes it feels like an outsider might be like, that's so irrelevant. Why are you coaching over here? And it's like, well, no. They're skill building, their experience, they're kind of shape shifting in this one area, and it oozes out into other parts of their life. And that's who they become. And so I was experiencing that, and I was like, I'd like to learn how to do this more skillfully for myself and to how to shepherd others kind of through this. And became an integral coach, offering this for others. And then full circle, at a Stegan reunion, told Lisa there, hey, you know what? I'm doing this now. I would love to come back into the fold of Stegan. And then a year and a half ago or so started, and that was like 3 years ago. And then a year and a half ago have been doing my own work and working within the Stegan context as well, which I'm loving. Part of me is like, you're an employee, or there's like an ego thing of like, oh, you're underneath something. And I'm like, there's like zero issue for me. I'm like, this organization is like, so, there's a generous culture and a really noble kind of direction they're heading in. Yeah. So I'm like, I love being on the bus with these guys. I really love it. It's like, it's so cool. And so I'm still like, oh man, am I in the honeymoon phase? Like a year and a half later, whatever, maybe. But it feels really good. I love working with Rand and his team there.
Yeah, he's such a stud and such a mentor, and yeah, I graduated in February of 19, and he and I have gotten closer since then. And it, to your point, noble. I think noble is the right word. It's a noble cause, because I do think that we're solving. There's some really big problems in the world that are continuing to grow, and this feels like a solution, to the problems of the world, which is kind of that is a noble cause. Like the world's heading down a path, to Rand's point, we have level 5 problems and level 3 leaders. Yep. And, when you look at what Stegan promotes, it's this idea of level 5 leadership and, leveling people up and this integral mindset. And I'm a huge fan and believer and student. So
he's opened it up. So like post 19, there was this kind of like pre 19, there was this like, oh, it's a secret club and you have to be nominated, and you only find out about it if you happen to find out about it, and it will find you. So that kind of worked for a bit, and it was kind of organic. And now there's a much more concerted effort of like, dude, we've got the goods. Like, how dare you not share that? Like that's squandering. That's like hoarding. Like it feels like it's like at some point it becomes like, that's creepy, dude. Like open the front door, like let people in. So the secret cool club is now it's on a path for much more expansion and connection with a wider pool of people, which I'm loving.
Totally. What's funny is for me is I was on this core value kick long before I got Stegan. I had been like I got introduced to it at BOG in 06. I had been experimenting with it heavily from 08 on. And then I had successfully built a hardcore value-driven organization starting in 13 and going from there, and then got into Stegan in 19. So when I got to Stegan, I'm like, I was, at that point, 13 years deep into core values, like as like my main like tool du jour, and so it was fun. And like I've actually like kind of debated Rand about some of our different beliefs around leveraging tool that is a tool, and it's been fun doing it. Now the book's out, and so what's funny, what prompted me to besides you just being an incredible person, wanting you to be on the show, was you had posted something online around this idea of what how, what, why, and the who is the deeper part, like who you are, and values are the personality of an organization, and they're your as one of my friends who's a coach, Robert Ellis, says, it's the essence of the organization, or essence of the person. That's Doug Irwin coaches with him. But I know you wanted to kind of chop that up and talk a little bit around people how they leverage values. And I'd love to get some of your feedback on how you're using that in your coaching and some of your questions and or thoughts. I know that you had that you wanted to dive into.
Yeah, so some of that stuff with that circle stuff. So we got the, the Simon Sinek, the, what you're doing, how you're doing, and why you're doing it. And the who was kind of, I felt like, there's kind of who the people are, like who they're being, their core values, who they are is sometimes I feel like undervalued. It's under thought through. And it's interesting what was coming up to me when I kind of posted that thing is like, when we look, let me just like cut to the chase. When we look to the future is so unknown. Like the outcomes, what we're going to accomplish is very unknown, but who we are is actually the closest thing we can know about the future. Who's on the bus? Who are those people? What are their values? Like if you like that is the most control you have is like, seeing them and who they are and who they're being, that's what's going to propel you all the way through. And those are the people you're going to end up with. It's not they're suddenly going to be magically different core valued people at the end of this.
No.
And so that's so when you're doing your planning, when you're figuring out the future, could you just for a moment take real good stock of who are we? Who's doing this? Not just who we are as an organization, but the people. Like, I think it's important to understand the leaders and who they are and what they stand for. And not in an aspirational, it sounds good on a sticky note up there, but like, I want to know you. And because this is how we're going to make decisions, this is how we're going to get through all this. We can lay down all these plans, and it's these are the tools that, these are the resources that are going to pull us through. So having that being known. And so I think it's surprising the number of organizations that don't spend a lot of time on the company's core values, or even like with Stagen, like where you get people to do their own core values. Like, let's understand the distinction there of like, as an entrepreneur, there's kind of closer alignment, but sometimes leaders that are in organizations might be misaligned, and like, let's know that, and let's like be with that. So I think there's a space there to better understand that.
Yeah, I think so. What I've come to the conclusion of is, and it goes back to the first comment, it was with the leadership goes the organization, right? So to your point, there's this intentionality around values that I think people check the box. Like, oh, hey, we got to have mission, vision, values, check the box. And then I say it's BAU, business as usual, go back to work, right?
Yeah.
But, the definition of core values, if you look it up in the dictionary, is the fundamental beliefs of a person or organization. Vern calls it the personality of an organization. Robert, as I said, the essence of the organization. But if it is the fundamental beliefs, the most important beliefs of a person or organization, how can you not be as intentional as possible? Because the beliefs drive the behavior. The behavior creates the results of the actions, which leads to the results of the organization. And so I look at that and I go, and I was just, so I've been on the road a lot doing core value rollouts with my because I have clients now, coaching clients, and I say raise your hand. I said raise your hand if you know like your most important belief. What's the most important thing you stand for as a human being? And then like everyone raises their hand. It's like honesty, loyalty, faith. I'm giving the popular ones, and I go, what's your number 4 core value?
Right? Nice, that's right? A good one,
right? And they're like, I'm like, you don't know because you haven't done the work. But it's your number 4 core value, man. Like that's up there. That drives a ton of your behavior.
Take that leg off the chair, and you're not going to be a happy camper.
I didn't say your number 24. I said tell me number 3. 1 or 2, everyone intuitively knows. Number 3 is which by the way, 3 you use literally all the time. It's just like it's just slightly below integrity and faith. Mm-hmm. Is it courage or is it adventurous? Is it love or is it happiness? Because they all mean different things, and they all drive different behavior. So yeah. I think that's where I think that there's huge opportunity is for people to really understand. Because if you look at Built to Last by Collins, he says when they studied the visionary organizations, he said they stand for no less than 3 and no more than 7. And most of them, it's around 4 or 5, right? And so I always push people to say, what are the 4 or 5 things that matter to you? Because those are the things you do almost all the time, every day. You know what I mean?
The push for me too. So this always, every time I bring it up in environments, people get like, did he just say that? And core values for me, well, I'll just say, there you hire and fire to it. So the word fire is like, what do you mean? Fire? And everyone gets panicked. And I'm like, no. Core values, if you don't fit, you shouldn't be in there. And that was an accident that they didn't. So I'm like, so we had a situation, I remember way back when, we had an incredible performer, like in terms of they were so skillful. They were like God's gift to design, like they're just like amazing. But there was some core value misalignment. But we kept justifying like, but they're producing and the client is happy. But we'll just overlook like the fact that everyone's just like, not person again is doing that thing. And it's like, and it was just like an infection that was in this. But we're like, no, we're still running the marathon. Don't worry about that infection. It's okay. We'll just keep going. And the second we got rid of that person, eventually we're like, there is such a misalignment here. Oh my God. It's like the whole cyst just went like, boom. And it's like, it was misalignment. The guy is amazing. Great person. Awesome. This is not like you're a bad person. It's just misalignment. And it's like, we're not, especially if you end up with like prima donna, like in a design kind of culture, if you have too many people that it's all about me and there's an ego driven, you can't have too many of those, and it limits growth. And people who hate on that when they're much more kind of kumbaya and can work with the multiple levels of personality. And so that was like a wake-up call of like, do you fire to your core values? Do you review alignment on a regular basis? So we talk a lot about it like on the onboarding, and I'm like, it's also the exit ramp. Let's like call a spade. So it doesn't, would you say set it and forget it? What did you call business as usual? So it doesn't become business as usual. It gets reviewed on a regular basis, part of, annual reviews. And it's like, we're looking at like, does this person need to get on the exit ramp here?
Yeah. In Traction, he has one tool that I like, which is the scorecard. And he goes, do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity to do it? Right. The get it is the core value filter, right? Do they get it? Right. To your point, are you an organization that's a kumbaya organization? You can't have a prima donna who's sitting there like wanting to sit on top of the throne that everyone else is carrying. But vice versa, you might be I call this an assassin organization, which there's tons of them, where, dude, if you're not an assassin, you're not going to enjoy working there. And the assassins, like, they don't mind. There's no honor among thieves. They're cool with the fact that everyone's going to backstab them because they're going to backstab. And you just got to deal with the side effects of that. And as long as you know that that's what you are as an organization, own that shit. I mean, just to be specific with this person, I just like the last kind of button on it because I kind of forgot this detail. Part of the prima donna-ness was like, I only want to work with the primo clients we're getting. I don't want to work with these clients. We're like, maybe we'll try to filter you, but like we've got our organization to run. I'm not gonna like give you I'm gonna go and hunt specific kill for you to like serve you on a nice platter. I'm like, you work with us. Like we're not like serving you. It was just like, this is getting ridiculous. And so it just goes to the fact, and you said it, is there, I don't think they're, very rarely are there bad people. There's just bad fits. Right.
Absolutely.
And I used to say this to my partners. I'd say, like, when we fired people, even if they worked at mine's blue collar finance. Right. I would say, look, even when we fire people, I'd say, look, if they're there for a week and we fire them, we owe them severance. And they'd say, what do you mean? Like, what if they stole from us? So I said, it's our fault for hiring them. We should have done a better job of vetting who they are as a person. We own that responsibility.
Good for you. Wow,
so,
that's amazing.
And it was a bit of a negotiation because they said, well, that doesn't make any sense. They didn't do us well, we did them well. I said, no, we owe it to them and their family to vet them to make sure they're going to be a good fit for us.
Yeah.
So that became
in the short window, that seems like a bad business decision. And what it does is it's like it really deepens your commitment to onboarding the right people. Like, if you're gonna like, let's not just hire people because they're like, oh, we need them today. Like, are they really for tomorrow? Are they us? Are they we? That's amazing. What I thought you were going to say, which is a much smaller thing, which we used to do, and we meant it. And it sounded like when we would when people would leave the company, we said we were liberating their future. Like this container for them it's not working. Like this is not, they aren't bad people. They have they need more alignment, to Dave Rendell's thing. Like they need an environment where they're more in alignment of who they are, and they will flourish and blossom. But this is clearly not working. And so we're doing each of us a favor by doing this. It's not, totally. It sounds so harsh to some people that are so like, I'm being fired, and it's like, really, no, we're liberating your future. Like,
you're not going to crush it here, so let's make it work, because I want you to do. And I used to say, I want them to do really well. It's not going to work here, and this is the wrong environment for them, given what we value and how they're performing within that structure.
And I think underneath that I realize now that there's got to be an abundance mindset. There's like, if there's a scarcity mindset, like they're not going to get another job, or we're not going to find another person. Like if you come from a scarcity mindset, that's why this sounds like you crazy, man. Like, but if you have an abundance mindset, like there is places for all of that. There's enough for all of that to happen. Then you can navigate through that in that generous kind of view of the world.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I agree 110%. We're running into the last couple minutes here. Cool. And there's a hard stop at the top of the hour, but look, I wanted to talk to you about your question around people like picking the values and leaning into them on the future. I don't think we have time for that, but what I was going to say this to that. And why don't you ask the question you asked me earlier, and I'll give you a quick answer, and maybe we'll do a part two, and we could dive.
Yeah, so I think there's this aspect of like, I now know my core values, and there's these. Keegan talks about competing commitment. I think it's Keegan, competing commitments, where it's like, now I've laid out all these values, but you can't hit 100%. There's at times like family is in odds with some other thing. At some point they kind of rub. And what I've noticed with some people in coaching is that they have their go-to values that they kind of use all the time at the expense of others. I'm in that right now. Health and wellness, core value, kind of getting trumped by other stuff. And almost like as the other ones get energy, I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, and I feel like I'm over lumping onto some of my core values. And so I'm just curious, like thoughtfully, how you deal with like the competition, the sometimes in decisions where there almost feels, it experiences like this incongruence of I can't have both right now. Like it's like one tends to want to get more. And I don't know if that's a real situation, but it feels like that. So I just, how to use core values amongst each other is, I'm curious about tools and thoughtfulness about how to do that.
So Bob Glazer mentions this around the hierarchy of values, right? Which I think is kind of this idea around competing values too. And he talked about the CEO and founder of WD-40, I think talks about this hierarchy of values. I actually kind of just build a box and say, okay, let's say so for me, I think there's two parts: building a box and knowing I don't need 100% balance. I need 20% balance. So for my number 6 value is balance. I don't need 100% creativity. I need about 15% creativity, which is my number 4 value. Curiosity is just kind of always there. Happiness is a result of this stuff. Love is an important one. I want to pour into that. That's my number 2 core value. I want to put, and passion, it kind of happens as well if I'm pouring into these things. So for me, it's kind of deciding how much you want to give, and then I'll finish with this, and then I want to close out because I want to tell people where they can find you, is knowing the pendulum swings. And when I'm falling, and this is a walk the talk practice, when I'm falling out of a balanced one, I pour back into the other one to bring it back, and knowing that it's a pendulum and I got to fight to make them true. I always say you got to fight to make core values be true. And some come easier than others. So for me, I'm a 70-30 creative capitalist. And if I don't give my 30% to creativity, then I don't feel whole. And if I don't give my 70% to capitalism, I'm not happy. So that's kind of the way I think about it, and that's what I've been doing since my exit, is really playing with that, and that's tending to work from what I can see.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. Well, Tony, we got to wrap it up here. Why don't we tell everybody where they can find you? And loved having you on the show, brother.
Yeah. So the best way is just on my kind of main website that funnels out is at my last name, Lillios.com. So it's LILLIOS.com. And you can kind of find out all about me and how to connect with me there. Yeah, awesome.
Brother,
Thanks,
man, dude, I want to do a part 2. Do you want to do a part 2 with me?
I would totally be into that. And I'll fix my audio video. This is such a crazy video situation right now.
Yeah, you guys, so much fun, man. Tony, I really appreciate you, brother. And I'm looking forward to the next time we get to hang out together.
Cool.
See you, everybody. Peace out. We love you guys. See ya.